Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Flyer Gonna Flyer. We got a good one for you. We're going to be going over quite a bit this week. Go over last week's games as we usually do. We're going to put in a little bit of a sprinkle of a trade package, kind of extending onto the trade talk stuff we had last week of a hypothetical Elias Pettersson trade if he would have somehow come here. Because as we know, this team really needs 1C. We're going to give a little outlook on our confidence level of Danny Briere. Is it still up high? Has it gone down low? Is it about the same? We're going to be talking about some potential second half predictions. It's going to be pretty much freelance talk. So it could be pretty much anything. And then we're going to wrap it up with some next week ahead talk. Sit back, relax, and get ready. Flyer Gonna Flyer, episode 27 comes your way next. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Flyer Gonna Flyer. As always, I am Alex Frenette, one of three gracious co-hosts. Plus, we joined to us with the guest this week. So why don't we start with him this week? You know him, you love him. He's been here multiple times before. It's Isaiah from the O&B Puck. Isaiah, how you doing tonight this week?
How you doing? Hey, gents. Ready to talk Flyers, all the controversy and the non-controversy and a whole bunch of other stuff.
There's a lot to talk about this week. It's going to be a very good episode. I think we're going to get a lot of stuff off our chest, both good and bad. And also join with me, my two gracious co-hosts, starting with the man above me, Mr. Eric Martino. Eric, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing good today. Can't complain. I'm actually I'm missing my son's hockey game today to be on the show, but there's nothing like talking Flyers hockey, so it's okay.
Damn, I feel guilty now. Not bad. I didn't know that.
It was a last minute. The coach emailed us 2 days ago. Oh, you want to play? I'm like, okay.
Oh, jeez. Well, I'm sorry about that, but you know what? Your son's going to score. Your son plays what? Defense, actually?
No, he's
goal?
A goalie.
We're going to get a goalie goal today. He's scoring a goalie goal empty netter.
Don't say that.
I would love to see that. A 6-year-old.
Yeah,
goalie goal. He's going to dump it all the way down the ice. It's going to trickle in by a mere inch. And then last but not least, the legendary vet himself from the Flyers nitty-gritty, Mr. Jamey Bascow.
Hey, everyone. Aloha mahalo. Just digging out. Look out my window there. See all that snow? Yeah, we got pummeled. 11.4. So, I mean, that's a lot of snow for this area. Typically, they don't get snow. So, the week here has been horrible. Schools have been closed all week. They'll probably be closed for a month. So, with 11.4, they're done for a month. That's for sure. They just don't know how to deal with snow around here. So, but it is what it is.
Maryland?
For Salisbury, it may be. I'm going to be honest. They're just used to the beaches around here. You know, so you can't. Well, some people have been out there. I've seen in bathing suits, but other than that, but they're just not good with plowing. They just don't do it. And but it is what it is, and we're here to talk some Flyers hockey. So let's get started.
We got a bunch of different type of environments around here. Isaiah's from Tampa, where he doesn't know what snow is. My buddy above me, Eric, he lives in Canada. He can't get enough snow. And Jamey just got plowed with snow. I live in Massachusetts. We usually get a bunch of snow, but the last couple of years, it's been barely anything. We actually got snow today, too. Probably about maybe 4 inches, but nothing crazy. But we haven't had significant snowfall like you had probably in about 3 years. So, and we're used to that. But
yeah,
just
snow,
if I could.
Snow is interesting.
I live in Tampa, but I was born and raised in Philadelphia and lived in that area for 50 years. So,
so Isaiah does know what snow is. Just the area he's from doesn't. So I should rephrase that a little bit. My apologies. But yeah, it's the way the snowfall has been this year has been quite strange. But let's talk about the snow they skate on right now. We got some Flyers hockey to talk about. So we'll go right into our week recap. 3 games this week. We thought we were going to do 4, but we decided to record on Saturday this week. So we got 3 games this week. And it was a garbage week. 2-1. Overtime loss to Toronto on the road, 3-2. Game they, in my opinion, played up to par with Toronto. They went blow for blow. Played a pretty good first period. And actually played a pretty good second period after a relatively conservative third from both ends. Tyson Forster continued his hot play, scored early in the first period. That Forster Brinks Cates line continues to be the hottest line the Flyers have had practically all season. And it really showed again. They continue to play good hockey. Scott Lawton potted a goal in this one. Flyers ended up losing, unfortunately, in overtime because the skill of Toronto was just a little too much for the skill of Philly. Led to a rush where Morgan Riley buried one past Sammy Urson. I'm sorry, no, Ivan Fedotov was in net that game. I apologize. Then another game Fedotov started. Game relatively similar. This one, I think the Flyers kind of outplayed Toronto. Same thing. 3-2 loss. Again, this one, however, they lost in regulation. But I thought they played well. Gentlemen, what do you think about that home and home with Toronto? Isaiah, let me start with you since you're the guest of the week.
Sure. Well, Money Puck has something called the deserve to win-o-meter. Mm-hmm. And in both games, the Flyers came out ahead, especially on Thursday night at home. Tuesday night, the return game in Philly. The Flyers definitely had the statistical advantage. And I think the Flyers are actually playing fairly well in both of those games. The problem is we have to adjust our expectations for the goaltending. Now, if you look at Ivan Fedotov's work, those two games, the home and home against Toronto, were adequate goaltending. But in each one, we can cite a specific example of a goal that really should not have gone in. I think the second Toronto goal in Toronto in the first game was really caused by this amateurish rebound that ended up ping-ponging around and going eventually onto a Toronto stick and into the Flyers net. And then the game at home in Philly, you had Fedotov, who's all of 6'7" and pretty broad, even for a guy his age playing hockey, who really just hugging the short side post so much that a sharpshooter like Tavares could easily get with a far side with a shot that went in on a power play. And had he just squared up to the shooter even a little bit, he wouldn't have had any net to shoot at. So, but we adjust our expectations because we're all grading on a curve, because the Flyers really essentially have the worst goaltending in the league. So once we've made that adjustment in our minds and we accept that we have really horrible goaltending, and you look at the way the Flyers played, you could come to the conclusion, at least in the second game on Tuesday, that better players on Toronto had less chances, but because they're better players, they're able to cash in on those chances, whereas the Flyers have to work harder to get their goals, and therefore they're going to come up short. Now, there's an X factor there. If the Flyers are getting good goaltending in those circumstances, they're going to get more than 1 out of a possible 4 points in those two games. But they didn't. They got adequate kind of C- goaltending because there were some really good saves by Fedotov in both of those games. But this is where the Flyers are at right now. It's kind of like, it's whack-a-mole. What teams in the Flyers case are winning for one reason, but they're losing for this reason or that reason. So you never know what's going to pop up as a problem because of the Flyers' lack of talent, or in this case, less than adequate goaltending.
I want to kind of piggyback off of some of that a little bit. It's interesting you bring that up because it's something that the Flyers have been plagued with all year, is being consistently inconsistent. It seems like a new problem has been popping up each year, each game. Some of the big problems have been consistently there. Second period woes, lack thereof goaltending. The power play has been atrocious as per usual. I think a lot of that may have to do with scheme, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I have to agree on both of the goals that you mentioned that Fedotov. The second goal, I actually tweeted about it myself, was just really bad rebound control. He left that rebound right in front of the slot. If he lets that thing kick out to the boards like he should have, as a 6'7", 6'8" frame goalie, that doesn't even end up being a quality opportunity. But now, don't get me wrong. Fedotov in those two games, as you mentioned, he was adequate. C- I think is about fair. It was average goaltending. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. But it was okay. But there were still some stuff that he could have did. And you mentioned the Jonathan Tavares goal. He definitely played that poorly. That's one of the things we've also on this show mentioned, that he has been consistently struggling is being square to the shot. Playing small, he plays smaller than his size indicates. You're a 6'8" goalie. You can't get beat over the shoulder like you do. Or in this case, beat off to the side. Play your positioning. Use that giant frame to your advantage. Play out of the net more and block that type of shot. Tavares isn't coming in 2 feet in front of the net. You have defensemen covering the inside of the circle right there. Play big, play to your size. And I think you hit the hammer on the nail there, Isaiah. It's just been an inconsistent. It's been what has plagued Fedotov. Now, mind you, I still think he played better than what you would have probably got from Kolosov at that point, because I think Kolosov right now has been consistently letting in soft goals. As I've mentioned on the show, and as you probably mentioned on social media multiple times, I think he needs to be sent down to the AHL. But we've mentioned this a million times here, so I don't want to hit a dead horse. But I did like, for someone who didn't play for a month, I thought he played at least respectable. Not great, but respectable. Jamey, let you talk about those 2 games next. What did you see out of that?
What I saw was if they have Carter Hart, they're 2-0. So they're at least, 2-1 this week. Maybe not so much against the Dallas Stars, but they would have at least swept Toronto, that's for sure. And that's been the story or rhyme all season. Just the Flyers goaltending just hasn't been adequate enough, and that's one reason why I have them, on the bubble / missing the playoffs before the season began. I was very, very concerned about the Flyers goaltending. I was concerned about Samuel Ersson rebounding and coming back strong from his good season before the last season stretch there. Then you just didn't know what you were going to get from Fedotov, and you had to presume by the time training camp finished that Alexei Kolosov would have gotten a shot as well. You just didn't. There were so many unknowns in terms of the net that I had them missing for that very reason. So when you're getting adequate goaltending, that's good goaltending, in my opinion. Like the backup goaltending, that's what a backup goaltender actually does, is just hold them in there enough. In the same token, the 5 in front of Fedotov played phenomenally in both games. I'll admit that was probably their best games. I've seen them all year consistently, the 5 in front, to include the defense. There are some dumb penalties. They take too many penalties or whatever, disciplinary. But other than that, I thought the 5 played great. Another problem that I've had all year is the Flyers can't finish. Like, they have not improved from last season. I think they've actually regressed. And that's part of a big regression in my end, because I actually thought that they would learn last season, okay, if we just finish some games here, at least 2 or 3 of them, then we could squeak into the playoffs. They left points on the board. Owen Tippett misses a wide open net. I mean, wide open. And I'll say it again, wide open. I'm going to be honest, that's something my 6-year-old pounces and puts in the net every. We're playing roller hockey outside. He hits that 9.9 out of 10. And but let's not talk about that, right? Let's not talk about the lack of finishing from the Philadelphia Flyers. Let's continue honing in on the goaltending that has been subpar, this season, but the lack of finish, is really irritating me. It's not so much, Ivan Fedotov or Alexei Kolosov anymore, or Samuel Ersson. You figure that Samuel Ersson's going to get hurt, now. And then, they can't send Alexei Kolosov back to the AHL, which they need to do, because you can't, because he continues to stay unhealthy. He can't stay healthy. But let's continue to hone in on I agree, the goaltending has been putrid, but I'm okay with what Fedotov put forth. Mm-hmm. I'm more pissed about the lack of finishing. I just can't. I can't get over it anymore. I'm like, what happened to Owen Tippett, anymore? What happened to? And I love him. And it's not like I don't like these players. I love these players. I like Owen Tippett a lot. I like Tyson Forrester a lot. But they're so inconsistent all year, and it's so frustrating to me. One game they look like Gretzky, the next game not so much. They look like Kent Manderville, who just comes in. Everybody remember Kent Manderville, who can't score to save his life. And I'm like, I just don't understand. I feel like I'm watching Kent Manderville all over again. Who was good playing, defensively, but couldn't score to save his life. And I feel like we're seeing that right now from the Flyers. It's like one game they just pot, oh man, goal after goal, and then the next, not so much. It's just frustrating. That's what I saw was frustration.
It's funny you mentioned this too. So the way this has been this year has been, I think there's probably been maybe 4 forwards on this offensive team, on this forward core, that have either lived up to or exceeded expectations this year, in my opinion, right now. Travis Konechny, Matvei Michkov, Noah Cates, Tyson Forster. And you know what? Maybe Bobby Brink to a lesser extent too. I guess you can maybe throw him in there. But outside of that, Frost has been what we've seen from Frost his entire career. Owen Tippett, outside of a streaky 3-week run, has been not good, or not good enough, I should say. Sean Couturier, again, continues to be an offensive liability. Not that it's his fault. When you have the amount of procedures you do on your body, it's going to break down. It's a shame. It's just been consistently inconsistent from these guys. And don't even get me started on Joel Farabee, who's a healthy scratch tonight. Who looked like he was starting to find it, but he had no finish. And despite that run of no finish, he effed with his head. And now he's starting to play sloppy again, and Torts acknowledged that and ended up giving Eddie his Ironman streak of 216 games, I think it was, or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate. You're absolutely right, Jamey. Like that Tippett shot, especially, he didn't even have to rip it the moment he got the puck. He could have held that for a second and aimed that. Joseph Wall was so out of position that the net was open. He could have held that for a second and shot it. It's not like he was getting pressure to shoot that. And he missed by a good 5-6 inches, the net, from about 8 feet out on a weird angle. He's got to pot that. You're getting paid over 8 years, over $6 million a year. You've got to pot that. No excuse. I still have PTSD from the Sanheim miss against LA. That night topped that. That Sanheim miss, I didn't sleep that night after seeing that. And this might top that. But not going too much of a tirade. Eric, what was your take on those games?
No, pretty much. You guys, you hit it on the head right there on everything. Pretty much. Yeah. Look, I want to give a little bit of props also to Fedotov, because you know what? It's the second time this season that he's come in with at least a month off, where he has barely practiced or anything. And look, he let in 2 bad rebound goals in the first Toronto game, and then there was the Tavares power play goal in the second that he shouldn't have been leaning that far on his short side, but he made some big saves also, and you got to give him a little bit of credit. And to come in cold like that without after sitting for so long, I got to give him props there. Where the Flyers power play, I just it just keeps on sliding and sliding and sliding. Look, 0-3 against Toronto the first game, 0-4 in the second. If we can't score 5-on-5, at least come on, do something on the power play. And it's trending down again. I don't know if we'll catch the Islanders. I think they're still at 11% or something, the Islanders. But the way it's going right now, we might end up catching the Islanders and probably finish 32nd again, or at least 31st. So that's really, really concerning. And look, Noah Cates, man, this kid is just impressive. The last month that he's been having. Look, on the second Toronto game, the second goal there, his work along the boards just to free that puck and get it to TK, who was wide open. I don't know who was supposed to be covering TK there, but
what a stick lift. That was open.
Yep.
And so no, look, that's pretty much what I took from those 2 games.
And you're right about power play. To give you a little update on that, Flyers are currently sitting 29th. They're at 14.7%. For the 4th year in a row, they're likely going to end under 16% on the power play, which is unacceptable. Islanders are 10.9% right now.
Oh, wow, went down.
That has the potential of being a historically bad power play. It might be. There's a chance it could end up having the worst percentage of all time in a single season. I don't know what the exact number is for first, but it's that is something. But you shouldn't be in a race with that team further to that point. But you're right. Fedotov came in with no game action in a month. The last time, I think it was maybe about 2.5 weeks. It wasn't quite that long, but still lengthy time to not play. So, yeah, he played good for the amount of time he was given. I have no ill will on him. And then we move to that Dallas game. In my opinion, one of, if not their worst game they played of the year. It was definitely in the bottom three. They were killed on the rush constantly. They were giving up good opportunities left and right. I said at the beginning of the game, Ursa looked a little shaky, and I thought he settled in, but the defense did not. This team gave up way too many high-quality bids to Dallas, especially in that first period. Both of their goals were off the rush, I believe, in the first. And the second, it just continued. The Flyers' second period woes, where they do nothing. That game was a disaster, top to bottom. I think Torts nailed it in the press conference, simply saying we sucked. And that game sent Flyers Twitter on an uproar. Let me start with you this time, Eric. What did you think of that Dallas game?
Oh, no, look, they didn't have it at all that game. I guess like those last two games against Toronto really took all their energy, and because they really did put very good efforts against Toronto in both games. And so, like, no, the first two periods, they lacked energy. They were off their game completely. Like a lot of miscues, a lot of stuff that just didn't go right. And look, it's funny because the last episode I was talking about like Maverick Bork being a potential trade target for the Flyers, and then the guy goes and opens the scoring against us. So I found that kind of funny. And no, look. Again, power play 0 for 2, another 0 for on the power play. Third period, I thought third period they came out hard. They came out like with a purpose. And look, they got one goal. Morgan Frost scores I think it was like the 10-minute mark or just before the 10-minute mark, and to make it a 3-1 game. And then the Flyers get a power play right after, like not long after that. So you know what? If they would capitalize there and make 3-2, we got a game going. But again, power play struggles, and then they just, Dallas just closed out the game. Look, Dallas showed their dominance. Dallas is a top team in this league. Dallas is a great team, a skilled team. And they just showed who they are and who we are. That's what I took from that game.
I think Dallas might be the best defensive, or one of the best defensive teams in the league. I think they've allowed the least amount of goals in the NHL coming into the game, something around those lines. But they've been incredible this year defensively and in net too. Ottinger is one of the probably, if not the best American-born goalie in the NHL. It's either him or Hellebuck. Maybe Hellebuck might get the edge, but he's been absolutely incredible. Isaiah, let me hear your thoughts on this game.
Well, there was a sense that the Flyers came out with not the best amount of energy, and they were getting outclassed. The first two periods were really, really a tough watch. And fortunately for me, having watched so many games through all these years, I had let the game lapse about an hour ahead of time. And when it was 3-0, I just hit fast forward. And if I missed some granular detail about this game, let me accept my apology. Because you get to a point when you watch a team, especially this last dozen years, imagine following a team since 1969 and watching this garbage the last dozen years. So anyway,
it's 2 cups.
So I hit fast forward and I look at the score and I'm looking for the 1 to pop up. Okay, they scored. So I rewind it a little bit and I start watching it. I'm like, okay, show me something. And that's how you get. They were just, I mean, if you just look at the Corsi and expected goals for, it matches up a horrible effort. And John Tortorella after the game said we just played shitty, and he just wants to throw the tape away and forget about it. Of course, they come back and threaten to kind of sort of make a game of it in the third, so the numbers look good, but that's what they call score effects anyway if you're analytically inclined. But really just a bad effort, one of the worst games of the year, and coming at home after 2 superior efforts when people were starting to brag on their process. If we could only get the goaltending. And again, this feeds back into what I said in the very beginning about whack-a-mole. When you're a losing team, when you lack in certain areas, in 3 or 4 core areas, whether it's special teams play, the ability to finish, the goaltending, or just the ability to maintain a level of consistency across the lineup, there's always going to be a different reason why you lose. This one was just a clunker. And you can pluck out a certain statistic for this or that, but you're really not going to learn much. I can tell you that it was great to see the one bit of good news in this game, if there was any, was Matvei Michkov played his best game in a while, because in his last 13 games, counting this one, he only has 2 points, and he's been a minus 17. So I think he had 8 shots on goal. He was very active. So let's hope they can take that momentum in his
down,
game.
Rick. Sorry, continue. Rick put up a funny sign on that. Continue.
Yeah, and take the momentum in his game and move forward and apply it to tonight, so the Flyers can give a comeback performance in what many people are calling the most important game of the year. I say that sarcastically, of course.
Wasn't that 7-shot game he had against Toronto, though? I thought it was the second Toronto game he did that.
Well, he was not as effective or as active. He might have been building toward that, but I really noticed him. Some people remarked that it might have been his best game of the year. Of course, we talked about the setups.
He was all over the place.
You know what? I will say, Matvei, and we can take this as a bit of good news, because Matvei has been building this, I feel like, these last couple games. You go back to last week, that San Jose game, he didn't score anything, but he looked excellent in that game. That second Toronto game, I think you saw the Matvei Michkov you saw in Sochi, where he was just taking over. Did he end up on the scoring sheet that game? No, but he put up 7 shots. He could have easily had 2 assists. There was one little saucer pass. He hit Frost coming across to the net that Frost couldn't handle. It hit his stick and just hopped over it. And then obviously we don't even need to talk about that beautiful feed he hit to tip it. That gives me PTSD. I feel like I'm having war crimes right now even talking about that. But he definitely has shown progression. There was during the beginning of this rut that he was on, there were games he was just not showing up. He went missing. You talk about the Ducks game. He had the first Ducks game. He had that bad turnover where Tortorella benched him for the third. We were all expecting the healthy scratch. And then suddenly comes out in the Kings game. He puts up the only 2 points he's had in that frame. I like to hope that he ends up getting something tonight, but we'll see. But yeah, I agree. Matvei has found his game a little bit for sure over the last few games. Now it's only a matter of time until it starts showing on the score sheet. Jamey, what did you have to take out of that Dallas game?
Well, Isaiah does not drink. I just want to make that note. So there's not enough beer for Isaiah, to drink, not enough wine or whatever. So, but all of us, I'm sure had enough beer. There probably wasn't even enough beer to go through the entire game. It was just, in my opinion, their worst game of the season. They just were flat. They just lacked energy. I don't care if it was the first period, the second period, third period. They did play a little better in the third, and that's because they just played, in my opinion, so bad the first 2 periods that they had to look better in the third. It wasn't like they were killing it or overtaking or dominating the game and just put this great third period together. No, that's not how it went. They just played so darn bad the first 2 periods that they looked better in the third because we were watching a sour product. And I don't talk about the Flyers like this very often, but it's just been, I'm sorry, there's a lot of frustration in my end that's just bubbling. And I just can't fathom. I knew before the game started, once they announced that Ottinger wasn't playing and that the backup was playing, I knew it was over then. The Flyers just do not play well against backup goaltenders. I have no idea what it is, but all these backups that they play look like Martin Brodeur or Patrick Waugh out there against the Flyers. They are, I wouldn't say terrible throughout the year. They don't have the best numbers throughout the year. They play the Flyers. They know, okay, bing, .970 save percentage. They already know what's happening. They just don't play well against backups. So I knew before the game started, the Flyers were going to suck. They just don't play good against backups. And that's what should be said at these meetings. And, they should have a meeting on that alone, aside from their putrid power play. It's just, I'm sorry, but their power play is just god-awful. Just stop. I'd rather see them 5-on-5. Reject some power plays here. It just makes them look real bad. And the power play, no, it shouldn't be that bad. Do they have a ton of talent? No. Do they need more talent? Yes. But they have talented players on this team. There is no reason in the world that year in and year out they should be at the bottom feeders, close to the bottom, if damn near if not the bottom in the league in power play percent. I'm sorry. It's just putrid. So, no, there was nothing good that came out of that game. I can't even look at Mafia and say it was annoying. I'm sorry. It was just annoying. Yeah, fine. Mitch Kopp giving a stick to a young fan was probably the highlight of my night, because that girl made her night. That young lady, who received Mitch Kopp's stick. She'll remember that night, and that's called promoting the sport. She'll remember that night from here on out. She knows that on that Thursday night, Mitch Kopp against the Dallas Stars gave me a stick. That was the only good thing that came out of that game.
Before we move on, I do want to add one last tidbit to that, Jamey. I think they need to move Mafe back to the first power play. I don't know why. With all due respect to Joel Farabee, he should not be on the first power play over Mafe Mitchkov. Like, if you're going to – the fact that I get they're trying to maybe spread the wealth a little bit, it shouldn't be Mafe that ends up moving down. If you want to move someone, maybe move like – maybe mix up the quarterback. I'm not. And another thing, get Rasmus Ristolainen off the second power play. There is no reason he should be on the power play at all. Those are my little ads on the power play, and they need to get rid of Rocky Thompson at the end of the year. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's time with that. But before we move on, does anyone else have anything else to add?
Yeah, I will say that Samuel Ersson, I thought, actually coming back, actually played decently against the Dallas Stars. And if it weren't for Ersson, who knows? It could have been 9-10, probably 15-1. That's how bad they played. They just look so bad. Like, they just look lifeless. Let's not factor in, they played, all this stuff. No, you just can't make excuses. They just played bad.
All right. With that being said, let's move on to one of our segments for the week. So the first thing we're going to talk about is there's been a lot of news about a lot of turmoil happening in Vancouver. Elias Pettersson and JT Miller apparently are not getting along. They're on a bit of a free fall. They're the new overtime merchants of the league right now. I think they have like 9 or 10 OTL losses. It's been a rough run for Vancouver lately. I think they're still in a playoff spot right now. I believe they're the second wild card, if I remember correctly. But they've definitely been struggling. And there's been talk that one of them might be on the way out. Now, we know this team needs a 1C. And Elias Pettersson would for sure solve that issue. Now, how realistic it is that Pettersson ends up coming here, probably not that high. But I think why not have a little bit of an activity with this? Eric made this suggestion to us in the group chat. I thought it was a pretty cool one. So I want to hear you guys give me a trade scenario and why you think this would be a good one to send out, or how realistic it would be to bring Elias Pettersson to the Flyers. Jamey, let me start with you on this one. We had talks about some trades last week, and I actually mentioned Elias Pettersson in our trade talk as one of the guys after. So I'm going to probably have the same trade talk. I'll go a little more trade proposal. I'll go in a little more in depth as to why compared to last week. But Jamey, let me hear your hypothetical trade scenario to bring Elias Pettersson to the Flyers.
So the percentage of Pettersson coming to the Flyers is 0.0001. And the only reason I do that is because there's always a shot. First off, I don't think the Flyers, not just because of their situation, I just don't think they have enough to obtain a player of that caliber. I don't think that they have enough. And I think that what Vancouver is going to want, they don't want draft picks. They don't want first round picks are enticing, but it's not for this year. They are in a win mode now. So if you're not giving them players, NHL players, I saw a nice package to include Luchenko. I think it was by Derek, suitable alias. That was a good one. But that's not what they want. They don't want, even though Luchenko's knocking on the door, they want NHL players now that are currently playing. So the only proposal that I think I could come with, I'm going to be honest with you, is Travis Konechny, Morgan Frost, Bobby Brink, and possibly Emil Andre. That's about it. And that's no picks, no nothing, because they do not want draft picks. They want players now. And that's probably what it would take to, in my opinion, to obtain a player of that caliber.
Interesting. You make a fair point with that. Listen, I think we all know the chances of it happening are slim to none. I think his trade package, Derek, that you mentioned was Owen Tippett. I think he said the Flyers first. I don't know if it was top 10 protected or not. Jet Luchenko, and I think there was one other player.
A second round pick. It was a second round pick. Yeah, one second.
So yeah, that is a strong offer. I don't think it would probably be enough to cross the finish line either. But it just, a player of that quality, you got to at least call and see if they would entertain it, as unlikely as it is. How about you, Isaiah? Let me hear what your package, if any, would be added on this one.
Well, you have to look at where Vancouver is at in their timeline and what they have. If they actually chose Miller, who I think is 31 years old, and said, we're going to move on from Pettersson, you would have to think that they have Quinn Hughes, Brock Besser, and, they're kind of positioned to really start making a run. And Demko, if he's healthy, is one of the better goalies in the league. If they felt like this year was kind of like a break-in year to transition out of Pettersson, the Flyers will also have to match salaries. I think he's 11 million, 11.6 million through 2032. So you're going to have like a Ristolainen and, like a Farabee. But here's the key piece. They don't want a first-round pick, but they do want a player who could be ready to play next year. And to me, it's naturally would have to be Jet Luchenko, which I don't have a problem with, because the best player in the deal would still be Elias Pettersson. So it's going to have to match salaries, give them some positional security going forward. So if they're in their window right now, they can realistically hit the ground running and have real benefit from the trade. So maybe some salaries need to be negotiated in terms of the other forward. Mate would have to be somebody like Tyson Forster who could help them right away. That would be a very attractive piece. Ristolainen's got another year left. All of a sudden, it seems like that's actually a positive if the team has, the salary cap flexibility. I think they have 1.4 million now. But of course, if you're getting rid of Pettersson, that's 11.6 million. So you have to work that out, but you also have to give them something at center ice, or there's no deal. Yeah. And frankly, I don't think that the Flyers are a great match for the reasons that Jamey talked about, and I'm sure you guys have already discussed in previous shows. But certainly that kind of package is something I would be amenable to, because you just don't get that many chances to get a player of that ilk very often.
And that is honestly, that's a good breakdown. They definitely going to need some center help back. The thing, and as you just mentioned too, a player like that does not come around every day. I love it. I think we all know it's slim to none, but the talent is still there, and it's going to take giving up pieces to get pieces. And I see some of these people making offers saying, "Oh yeah, Frost, Farabee, and a first." And you know what you're going to hear if you offer that is a dial tone. Like that's, I've said this a million times. If you're going to make a trade of that caliber, you're going to have. I know Jamey liked that one.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah, maybe more like a fart noise. You're
gonna be like, no, beep. But you're going to have to give something of significance to get something of significance. Eric. We and you were talking about trades last week. You had some interesting names that we went over. I want to hear what your hypothetical for an Elias Pettersson would be.
Well, like Isaiah said, look, if they can make a trade, they're in win now mode now. The Canucks, okay, especially if they trade Pettersson and keep Miller. Miller is the older, so if they trade Pettersson in season, it's because they want a package that makes them want to compete this season as well. And like we said, they are still in the playoff spot. They're actually in the second wild card right now in the West. So they still have a chance to make the playoffs. And if the right trade comes around, to actually maybe do some damage in the playoffs. And that's it. Like we said, they're going to want a center in return for sure, because they're going to have to replace that hole that Pettersson leaves. And at the same time, Vancouver all season, everybody's been saying is they need defense, they need defense, they need defense. So what I'm proposing is actually a 3-team trade.
Ooh,
because the Flyers do not have a center to offer Vancouver. Like, look, Morgan Frost is the best center we have to offer, but I don't think he cuts it. So what I'm proposing is a 3-way trade. The team I have is the Islanders, but it could also be Detroit. Now with the Islanders, I'm looking at Brock Nelson. So I'm making a trade with the Islanders. Like, so the Flyers would trade with the Islanders. So let's say a first, one of the either Colorado or Edmonton firsts, with either one of Frost, Brink, or Farabee, whichever the Islanders would like. Because look, if they lose Brock Nelson, they're gonna need to replace a center. So maybe they'll want to take on Morgan Frost. Okay. And also at the same time, I don't know what the Islanders are doing, because I
don't think even Lou Lamoriello knows what he's doing.
So I don't know. If it's Detroit, I'm talking either Compher or JT Compher, or I'm talking Andrew Copp. So what they have term though, whereas Brock Nelson is a free agent at the end of the year. But personally, I think Brock Nelson is the better player. So basically, I would try and get one of those centers from either one of those teams, and then package him with Risto and Cam York. And if it costs another pick, maybe one of the seconds to Vancouver for Pettersson. And because look, that would solve. Although it would really weaken our defense, and so Danny Briere if this trade would actually come through, Danny Briere in the offseason would have to address the defense. But at the same time, now you're addressing your number one center need, which is personally I think is a bigger hole in this organization, because we got defensemen coming, but we have no centers coming other than Luchenko. So at the same time, it would add a completely new second pair to Vancouver, because you can run Hughes and Horonik when he comes back. Then you run York and Ristolainen on your second pair, and that moves Susi and Desharnais to your third pair. And now you have your replacement second line center, and either whether it's Nelson or it's Copp or it's JT Compher. So I think that's a trade that can actually, and you have if Flyers would have to throw us another second in that just to as a sweetener, at least Vancouver gets the players that they need to compete this year, that won't no futures, just players for now that can actually help them compete, and the Flyers get their center of the future.
I like that a lot. And you know what? That was creative. That kind of reminded me of the Provorov trade from a couple of years back. And it fills the holes. It fills the need. You have the opportunity to at least make it work. Your defense is a little ripped up, but you do have prospects like Emil Andre and Oliver Bonk who are coming and need opportunities to compete for those spots over the next couple of years. So, it actually in the same way helps you on the decor, because it opens up the logjam a little bit. So that was a creative one I really did enjoy.
And I'll get Grunts too. Don't forget Grunts.
Last week, I'm going to adjust it a little bit on the fly here. So the one I made last week was Cam York, Morgan Frost, both of the first round picks that aren't ours, Colorado and Edmonton's, and Columbus is second. So I gave them the draft capital. Now, you guys made some really good points here. I don't think Vancouver is going to want all that draft capital, unless if they want to trade it away for more player-ready pieces to other teams. So I'm going to kind of adjust this on the fly a little bit. So my trade package now, I'm keeping Cam York in there. As I said, you're going to need to give something up of significance to get something of significance. Cam York is a for sure. Jet Luchenko enters the chat. He's in the trade. I throw Joel Farabee in. So you have a winger who has shown that he can play decent hockey. He's got 2 20-plus goal seasons under his belt. He's still young. He's got some term. So I think a fresh start for him would do him wonders. And I would offer the Flyers first round top 10 protected. As long as it's top 10 protected. If that goes out of the top 10, you move it to 2026 and address what you need to address in the future. Emil Andre comes in and slots into Cam York's slot. I would like to think the Flyers' top 6 instantly gets better that way, because now you have a good amount of pieces needed for your top 6. You got both your right wings checked off at Mitchkov and Konechny. You have your 1C. Tyson Forster should be at the bare minimum your second line left winger of the future. And if Tippett can find some consistency, maybe he could slot in there as well. Maybe a middle sixer. Tippett has to find consistency. I want to say you paid him to be this guy, so he needs to eventually be into that. You just need to find another center, and you may have a real strong top 6. your first round pick is top 10 protected. So if it does end up in the top 10, you can address another top and, forward need, like another center maybe, or a winger. Michael Misa is someone I've raved over. I would love if they maybe potentially after him. Robert McQueen's another guy I'd like them to potentially address. He's another guy in the draft they could really keep an eye on. And then obviously your D help comes from within, as I just mentioned, Emil Andre, and your defense isn't quite the as much of a blood jam as you first saw. Oliver Bonk comes into the picture probably the year after, in 2020. Igor's contract runs out. You have your 6 guys that you can feel that you can steadily rely on, at least for the time being. That would be my package. So York, Farabee, Luchenko, and the Flyers' first-round pick, top 10 protected. If it goes into the top 10, it moves to 2026 unprotected pick. But yeah, does anyone else have anything else to add? Maybe any feedback on other people's trades?
Can I add something?
Yeah, sure.
None of your packages is enough for Pettersson, in my opinion. I think Jamey's right. Just don't have enough. It's going to be a huge ask to get Pettersson, especially at his age and everything. And then you got the cap issue. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, and that's a fair one. I saw someone on Twitter mention that it's probably going to take a Jack Eichel-esque type of package to acquire him. He's a 26-year-old first-line center who has already got a 100-point season under his belt. He had another season where he was over a point per game. People
he's a point-a-game player.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people talk about the soft argument, but I don't have any worry about that. Especially if he's going to have Tortorella for a year. He'll whip him up into shape. I have no worry about that whatsoever.
You had to throw Jack Eichel in there. You had to, huh? Like that is what bothered me about Chuck Fletcher is that they could have had Jack Eichel for cheap. And I say cheap because they wouldn't have had to give up much, to obtain him when he was hurt and or coming off an injury. It definitely lowered the value. Vegas practically, pretty much gave them, I hate to say this, not very much. You know what I mean? And the Flyers could have definitely matched or outmatched that trade package. And that's what we're not even talking about this situation right now if they have Eichel. Not even. This conversation is not even coming up.
Buffalo, what you could have had if you only let him have the next surgery he wanted. But anyway, does anyone else have anything else to add?
Well, look, I just want to say regarding Pettersson, if Vancouver is committed to trading him in season like now, because look, at the end of the day, if they wait till the off season to trade him, one, they take a risk because if it goes past July 1, his no movement clause kicks in. 2, if you want to trade him, they could always trade him at the draft or before. It's not an issue because then you have more teams involved. But if they really want to trade him in season because it can't they can't sustain what's going on right now with the two of them, with JT Miller and Pettersson. And look, their season is nosediving right now. If they need that change of scenery season now, that's why I think it's going to limit the amount of teams that can actually do it. Because look, the Flyers are able to do it because if we could get rid of some contracts, and look, then we'd have to go into LTIR. That's the only thing. So, but it's not an issue because then next season we have money coming off the books. Like I was writing the numbers. If we get rid of the players we have to get him and everything, it works for next season, and we have enough money to bring in a defenseman if we have to replace. Like I was looking at what's his name from LA, Garyon over. Oh man, I had it written down here. Gavrikov, who's playing on the top pair in LA right now. So we would have the money to actually bring him and bring in a top pairing defenseman. He's not an offensive defenseman; he's more of a defensive defenseman. But you pair him with Sanheim or something. But that's what I'm saying is if Vancouver really wants to trade him now, it's going to limit the amount of teams that could do it, and at the same time, it might lessen the package because you have no choice. You have to trade him now, and at the same time, let's say I propose you're getting a young good defenseman in York, so you have him for years to come. You still have 2 more, this plus 2 more years on Ristolainen, plus you get a second, right? Plus you get another center and a second. So I think that's the package that they're going to, because if you look at the Eichel package, a lot of it was also futures. Peyton Krebs was a prospect. Brandstrom was a prospect. You had Alex Tuck was the only established player in that deal. So, but I think Vancouver wants more established players to help them now because now is their window.
They need a center to replace Pettersson, don't you think?
Well, that's what in my proposal, it was a 3-way trade where I had Brock Nelson or JT Compher.
Yeah, but that's not
from Detroit.
That's not a comparable to Pettersson, though.
No, but you have to look at the overall package. You're getting 2 defensemen. You're getting basically a second pair and a center for just a center.
Yeah, but it doesn't address the problem that they're going to have. It's that they need a guy that's somewhere close to as good as Pettersson in that area.
Yeah, but they'll never get a package like that.
Probably not. You might be right on that.
Like I think it's Frank Saravalli. I forget who is it that says it. The team that's always trading the best player will never win the deal.
That's I agree. More time, 95% of the time, yes. But yeah, anyway, let's move on to our next topic. Unfortunately, Jamey had to leave. He had a little bit of a emergency to attend to, so he won't be joining us the rest of the show. So thank you for coming on, Jamey, as per norm. So moving on to the next thing, Danny Briere. So before we go into things, there's been a lot of trade talk with the Flyers, and it really started with this video that I'm about to play. So there's been talk in general about the confidence or lack thereof confidence, depending who you ask, in Danny Briere right now. And give him a listen. Probably one of, if not the most informed media guy out there, talked about the possibility of Scott Laughton getting moved at the trade deadline or potentially before. And I just wanted to let you guys have a listen because this video set Flyers Twitter into a blaze and even got me a little upset a little. So just take a listen.
I think that like Scott Laughton, so he's a pretty sexy name right now. But someone said to me, for what Philly is asking for him, they don't think the Flyers right now really want to do it. It sounds to me like they asked somebody for a first round pick. I don't know who it was, but somebody said like, okay, if I want to do Laughton, it'll be a first rounder. Like, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. What someone said to me was that means that at this point in time, they don't really want to trade that guy.
So that video got a lot of fans upset at the fact that the Flyers seem like they continue to be reluctant on moving a guy like Scott Laughton. Now, listen, I personally love Laughton. He, phenomenal. One of the nicest guys, if not the nicest guy in that locker room. Does an incredible amount of work on and off the ice. Great person for the LGBTQ community. Fantastic human being just in general. Really connects with the city and always busts his ass 24/7 on the ice. He's pretty much replaced of what you got from Wayne Simmons, at least from an effort standpoint. But at the same time, he's had a good year overall. I think he has 22 points in 43 games. He's been good. He's on over a 40-point pace right now, which for a bottom sixer, you can't ask for much more than that. I think he's got 7 goals and 15 assists. 9 goals and 13 assists.
Yeah, 9 and 13.
Yeah. And he's only got 1 more year left after this year, and then he's set to hit free agency. This set Flyers Twitter into a blaze. A lot of people now questioning whether they truly have confidence after especially the 2024 offseason where they really weren't that active. They did bring Mitch Cobb over, which is a massive thumbs up and a win for Briere. Absolutely. Got him over 2 years early. None of us really expected that quickly. And you got rid of the Cam Atkinson contract. You bought him out. But outside of that, it was practically the same team. So, gentlemen, with that being said, I want to ask you, let me start with Isaiah here. What is your current confidence level in Danny Briere, and what is your if it's still high, if it's about the same, if it's gone down, and if it has, or if you're maybe even setting a time limit on him? What is your take on this on the way Briere is handling things right now?
Well, I have set a time limit on it. I've said it on our shows, on the OMB podcast, and recently on Twitter. And I feel right now, Daniel Briere is on trial. This is the third year of this rebuild. And even when you have Jason Martinez saying it's time for the Flyers to improve and get off the, quote, treadmill. In other words, not expecting them to necessarily be this cup contender, but moving this rebuild forward to improve on what they have. Like Montreal has made some attempts to add some players along the way while they're collecting young talent and putting a team together and still not always doing well. They're rewarding that locker room for buying in and the fans. And notice I put it in that order. Okay. So I think the Flyers are at that particular juncture right now. So between, I would say, now and the end of July, Daniel Briere has to make the kind of moves where everyone, including the guys in the locker room who are putting up with this Martinet in Tortorella, blocking the shots, putting up with the process, all the drama that he brings, a lot of it unnecessary, but I still think he's a good coach. I think they have to reward them. So, and there are markers for me, the Couturier nonsense where there's clearly two guys that are not on the same page.
Yeah.
And the idea that this Kolosov, who's now a 23-year-old, is kind of almost has him by the short hairs. Like, well, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And Kolosov needs to be in the AHL. And as soon as he really started going bad, they should have been willing to even put up with Pettersson up from the AHL to make sure that you put guys in the right position. So if you're going to have Emil Andre in the AHL because development is what's best for him, why should this not apply to Kolosov, considering that Pettersson will probably give you the same percentage, save percentage goaltending, even though Kolosov is flashier, makes most incredible saves. Understand, if you know the position, Kolosov puts himself in desperation mode a lot of times when he doesn't have to because he is inexperienced, even if that's his style. But I don't want to get away from the point. And the point is this. There's reason to feel as if Danny has played a very pat hand for a little bit longer than he should have. And he maybe could have added one more significant young player, if not on the roster, someone to look forward to, who would be a minor leaguer. I've talked many times about Buffalo and how much access they have at the center position. There are other organizations that have accesses in other positions the Flyers need. And I think it's time for him to assert control. And of course, some of this would run contrary to some of the things that Tortorella wants to do, trying to win every game and all. But you're going to have to try to win every game with the personnel that you have. And ultimately, the general manager makes that decision. So it's time for Briere to say, listen, Kolosov has to go to the AHL. And if we need to put up with Pettersson because Ursan can't stay healthy, then that's what we're going to do. We need to find out what we have in Fedotov. And look, worst came to worst, if they need a Band-Aid outside the organization in goal, then do that if you have to. You need to reward the guys in the locker room with something very soon is how I feel about this. And I think I cited a couple of situations which illustrate that. If by the end of July, we just see we see moves where it doesn't look like they're really moving the needle too much, and they're counting on Jetlachenko, a 19-year-old, next year to come in and play significant minutes, when his offensive game clearly could use some skills coach, some development, probably could use some AHL time. He needs a lot of work offensively. If he doesn't do that by that time frame of the end of July, then I would think he's on the clock for someone who should be, under the gun.
That was honestly, you hit the hammer on the nail on that.
Yeah. I wanted to say the same thing. That was
perfect. Absolutely perfect, Isaiah. I couldn't have said it any better myself. And that's about the time frame I personally have. Is you have until I maybe even end of July. I'll be fair about that. End of July. I personally was thinking about the NHL draft, but I was like, you know what? I'll give him free agency to see if he can work out a trade or something. But here's the thing. I made an interesting point, an interesting thought, I should say, maybe not point, that made me think of something. One of the things that I've noticed with Danny is he really tries to win every single trade that he has made. And he has not been shy to try to bring salary back to get that type of value. Now, I will give him credit for one thing. He's done a fantastic job on gathering assets for this year's NHL draft coming up. They have 3 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks. That first, as of right now, is a 6th overall pick. Whether that stays there or not is still to be determined. And the other 2 picks are right now, I believe, both in the mid-20s. I think Colorado, I think, is 23, if I remember correctly. Edmonton's like 25 or 6, something along those lines. So very similar to what you got in the trade with the Provorov trade, getting Columbus's first back, or technically was the Kings, but which leads me to that particular trade. It feels Danny Briere hit a home run in that trade. I have to give him credit. He was very active in the 2023 offseason. He got rid of Provorov. He got rid of the Kevin Hayes deal. He almost had a massive blockbuster with St. Louis that ended up getting axed, which now looking back to it, kind of thank God it did, because Torrey Krug is on LTIR right now. Travis Sanheim has kind of revitalized his career. He would have lost a few other pieces. I mean, Scott Lott would have been gone. Kevin Hayes would have been gone. He was already gone anyway, but besides the point. But anyway, looking back towards that, I've noticed ever since that Provorov trade, it feels like Danny has tried to win every single trade he has attempted to make. And you kind of get a little bit of an example from that Scott Lott proposal. I don't know if it's the Flyers don't want to trade Scott Lawton or they're not willing to move off the price that they believe Scott Lawton is truly worth. And I really hope it's not the last. I started to think it's more the former, but maybe a little bit of a mixture of both. But I think at the same time, Danny needs to realize that you're not going to significantly win every trade you make. You need to realize in the situation that you need to get him equal value. And listen, I love Lawton as both a player and a person. He's an even better person than player. But there's a point that you need to look at this and realize you need to get some level of considerable value for the guy. I thought the ship may have sailed in 2023. And it looks like it's represented itself with how well of a respectively decent season he's had. He's on pace for over 40 points as a bottom sixer. And he can be inserted into a second line that may have been injury plagued a little bit. Would I recommend it? No. But he can be for short-term emergency situations. But you need to make sure that you at least capitalize on somewhat of the value. Now, as for me, where am I on Danny right now? Right in that middle ground of neutral, but it's slowly starting to trend down a little bit. And I agree with you, Isaiah. I think you hit the hammer on the nail. The time frame is July. You have 6 months, Danny. This is your trial run. You had a good 2023 offseason, or at least attempted to have a home run one, and 2024 and the moves lack thereof since the 2023 deadline, the 2024 offseason, and this season in general, you've missed on ample opportunities. You had guys like Jiricek who was available that you didn't end up capitalizing on. You had other names that were available as too. You had like a Dylan Cousins that's been talked about. Now, he hasn't been traded yet, but I'm hearing Detroit has been aggressive trying to go after a guy like that. And then you have other names that Eric has talked about, maybe in Seattle, maybe like a Shane Wright that you might want to ring the bell on. There are guys that you can potentially make moves for, but you can't sit on your hands and wait for a deal that you believe you're going to win. I think Danny needs to accept equal value at some point.
Can I just add one or two things there?
Yeah.
First off, the Flyers have started to get a reputation as a team that feeds Friedman stuff for maybe an agenda or for their own purposes. I'd be wary of that. I'm not saying necessarily that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely feel that way as well. And of course, the second point just left my mind. So it's.
Don't you love that?
I think about it halfway through Eric's.
Can I get a point in quick before Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what Isaiah said, he mentioned Montreal, and I'm a Montreal guy, and I get it, and it's not the reason why, but they should be copying a lot of what's going on here in Montreal. They should be. And another thing is, in the last draft, as a guy that's not a Flyers fan, but looking at it, I'd be a little worried about him at the draft with the great picks you guys potentially can get there. I was a little. I there's chinks in his armor, and I saw them at the last draft. In my opinion, that's my opinion. Anyway, go from there.
And that, you're entitled. That's a fair opinion. I mean, there was guys over the Luchenko pick that were potentially better. Boyum obviously was there. Kostas Helenius, Cole Eiserman. There were names that people believe would have been a better suited pick. Now, Luchenko has looked good so far. I'm not mad at the pick, but I still don't believe he was the best guy available at all. But he looks like he's going to be a considerable prospect for sure. But continue, Isaiah. Sorry.
No, I had another point. It slipped my mind, but I will say for Montreal, it's kind of like the reverse of the prior year where Montreal goes and takes Reinbacher. Mm-hmm. And, there are some other players besides Michkov. So,
but fair enough that Reinbacher unknown yet. I get it looks bad, but I don't think that's fair. I think I'm still very confident in that. But I get.
Yeah, we could say the same thing about Luchenko vis-a-vis Boyum. So yeah, that's all I'm saying. But yeah,
no, that's fair.
In fact, we had a show. We had a show where we had Amy Johnson who follows the Canadians, and we were going through this whole thing with Demidov and Michkov and all that kind of dynamic that's going on. And we came to the conclusion, if you compare both teams, they would agree with you, Rick, because what's happening in Montreal to me would have me feeling better than what's happening in Philadelphia right now. If there may be a year ahead, but still, I'd rather be a Canadians fan if I didn't really care and I just wanted to root for a team that's going to be better sooner and probably has a little bit more depth in their prospect line. Then I think the Canadians are doing a better job right now.
Yeah.
Also, at the same
Eric,
time,
what do you got to add? Sorry.
I just want to add on the draft because I think it was even Freeman that pointed it out. I think that he had said it at one point after the draft that Briere was very, very involved in trying to trade up for. He tried to trade to I think 3 or 4 to get Demidov, and then he tried to trade up to 7 to get Berkeley Catton. So like the guy is trying. Like you hear that he is trying, and even it's been said that he's one of the most active GMs on the phone. And at the same time, I like to say, like, you know what? It takes 2 to tango. So, like, if the other team doesn't like the package that you're presenting to them, and like, look, like Alex said, like, you can't be scared to lose a trade. And I've said that before myself. But I tell myself there's certain trades, you know you're gonna lose that trade. But like when it comes to, let's say, someone like Lawton, like with the clip that we just heard from Freeman, Philly really has no need to trade for Lawton, to trade Lawton. Sorry. So, like, I like that Briere actually set a price. He goes, listen, you want Lawton, it's going to be a first. Plus, the teams that are going to be trading for Lawton are most probably finishing anywhere between 23, 24 to 32, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's not like you're getting a top 10 pick for Lawton. Like, obviously, he's not worth a top 10 pick. But don't come and tell me that a guy like Lawton that can play up and down your lineup, that can play, that plays the way he does, that's not worth, like, a late first. Especially with a year extra on his contract. So you're not getting a rental. This is a player that you're getting for 2 runs. So I actually like the fact that Briere said, you know what? You want Lawton, fine, but it's going to cost you a first.
I'll tell you that I don't think he's worth a first.
I'm not saying that he's worth a first, but I'm saying
I don't think you're going to get one.
But then if a team is offering you a third for Lawton, would you do it? Would you just take a third for Scott Lawton?
No, maybe a second, though. Look, last year, Monahan got us a first. And not a lot of firsts were handed out. But look at Monahan. Monahan's worth a first. And it wasn't like a high first. It wasn't late round first. But I don't think Lawton can do that for you.
But he was also a UFA.
Yeah, that does make it a little bit different, too.
But look what he got you.
Yeah.
No,
I don't think Lawton.
All I'm saying, Rick, is that the Canadians had to trade Monahan because he was going to walk anyway. Unless they were planning on resigning him. I don't know.
And they got a first for him.
Exactly. But what I'm saying is that I'm happy that Briere is setting a price on Lawton, and that he's like, again, they don't have to trade him. He has another year on his contract, and I don't want to give him away. Just like, even if it is a second, okay, fine. Maybe he'll settle for a second. But again, if the second is a team with championship aspirations, we're talking about an early third at that point.
Yeah.
So wouldn't I personally, I feel like a guy like Lawton would actually be more beneficial to your team than a 3rd round pick. So
I mean, that's fair. I definitely don't want to undersell in this predicament for sure. I mean, but I still think if a second is dangled along and you truly don't feel like you're going to get a first, I think they should take it. However, you run the risk of this as well. What if his value goes down?
yeah,
That's the only thing about waiting. You have term, and his value. He's had a good year this year. He has. It's been definitely better than last year. Last year, he had points where I didn't even know he was in the lineup. And this year, I think he had that 4-goal game against Detroit. Mind you, 2 were empty netters, but still, the Scott Lawton game, as we called it. We named an episode out of it. It was great, but he's got 22 points right now. He is shown, even if you take out the 4-goal game, he still has 18 points. So he has shown that he's played some level of consistency this year. And I don't know if he gets you at first. And I understand waiting, but you're also playing a dangerous game there, risking his value decreasing too. So, go either way.
How about getting a young player for Scott Lawton?
And that too,
aren't the Flyers now at the point where they have to start thinking more in terms of getting some players aren't getting opportunities? And this is more likely with a team that's a winner, a guy that can't break into the lineup who could break free. And Tippett's an example of that. Even for as maddeningly inconsistent as he is, we might have to add something with Scott Lawton. But the Flyers should be seeking out young players now because that's what they need. They have enough picks. They have 3 firsts and 3 seconds. And frankly, they're not going to use them all. They're going to trade them. And they're just assets. They're a means to an end. And right now, Flyers need players. And the other thing I was just going to add to the thought that crossed my mind was, this is an important time for Briere because it's starting to feel a lot like Ron Hextall's tenure. And if there is not the change that I talked about and referenced earlier, then people are going to rightfully say, we're into season 4. What have they done on the pro side other than bringing in kids they drafted, which happened under Hextall? Hextall literally refused to sacrifice anything on his roster in an attempt to move them forward out of what I thought was a ridiculous concern that he might blow their cup window chances. That was a joke in and of itself. But I don't want Briere to fall into that trap if indeed that's his mindset. That's not going to wash in version 2. It didn't wash in 1. It certainly won't in the next time around.
And one other thing I do want to add, they better not take any more salary. They have done this the last 2 years. That ship has sailed now. You took salary in buying out Kevin Hayes. You took salary on buying out Cam Atkinson. You took on salary on bringing in Ryan Johansson. You took on salary with the Tony DeAngelo buyout. Like they have so much dead money on the books right now that it's ridiculous. They can't do this anymore. And not only to mention, you still have the $6.25 billion sitting on LTIR for the next handful of years of Ryan Ellis too. One interesting move I wonder if the Flyers would consider this offseason to build up some cap. And I want to run this by you guys, if you guys would be open to something like this. I've mentioned this on social media before. Would you attach one of your late first round picks, or maybe an early second even, to the Ryan Ellis contract and dump him to a team just to free up the cap space? Is that something either of you guys would consider?
Not this year. I don't think, because look, like I was saying, I was going through the numbers, and again, it all depends on what Danny Briere decides to do with the end of this season and into the off season, because we don't really need that money right now. And at the end of like I said, depends who they bring in. If we're talking about Elias Pettersson, and then you bring in another in free agency, like I said, Gavrikov or something, then maybe you attach a pick to try and get rid of it. But for me, honestly, this season, for next season, I don't see it happening.
And that's fair. This is more just a hypothetical question. How about you, Isaiah? What would is that something you would consider? I think your mic's muted, by the way. Your mic's muted.
I would only consider moves that would facilitate player acquisition at this point. Everything has to be with that in mind. So if they think that there's something they need to do to clear the decks for an Elias Pettersson trade or something like that, then of course I'm open for it. But for the same reasons Eric spoke about, I don't think it's really the best move in general.
Yeah. And this is just something I thought of just in general, because I know there's going to be a lot of cap questions this year. As of this moment, to talk about Briere's situation that we have coming up, and we'll kind of let this segue into our next topic about predictions for the rest of the second half of the season. The Flyers are going to have, if the cap goes up as projected, the projection is going to be jumping from, I think, about $88 million to $92 million. So we're looking at about a $4 million jump. The Flyers will have about $17.5 million. And they're going to have Tyson Forster, Cam York, Noah Cates, and Morgan Frost all up to be re-signed. Now, between you and me, I think Morgan Frost is good as gone. I don't think he'll be here after this year. Whether he's here or not is a different argument. But anyway, with that being said, do you think maybe in the offseason, is there going to be that thought in mind of potentially moving another piece or two to bring these guys into a fair contract, as well as considering on moving or bringing in another body as well? Because they don't have as much cap as people think. $17.5 million can evaporate like that when you have two quality and one improving player to sign. Eric, let me let you start this one.
Well, look, like I had said, it all depends on the plan, because right now, and like with Danny Briere for me, because it's like, look, I see the plan, I see what he's trying to do, but that's it. It's this summer. They have to, like we said, this summer is that I think he has to start reshaping this team, because like so far I've been okay with Briere, what he's been doing, everything that's been happening. I've been completely fine with everything he's done. But I think we're getting to a point, like as I said, now we're getting to a point. We know who these players are. We know what they can do, but now we have to add. We know what we're missing, so we have to add what we're missing, and we have to subtract with some of the players on the roster. So, like you said, we have 17 million in cap space going into next season, but at the same time, if we get rid of Joel Farabee, that's another 5 million. If you get rid of Bobby Brink, that's another 1.6 or whatever he's making right now. And depending on, and like, look, Cam York, it's going to be probably a bridge. Noah Cates, with the way he's playing right now, but still, I'm thinking you're looking at roughly 3.5 to 4. So look, the Flyers will have money to do things if they want, but he has to reshape this team right now. He has to add the centers, and like he was at the end of the day, like, look, we're in a rebuild, and technically he's only been a GM for 2 years now. It's going to be his 2-year anniversary at the end of basically post trade deadline.
March.
Post trade deadline, it's going to be his 2-year anniversary because he took over right after Fletcher when he screwed up the whole James Van Riemsdyk thing. So, it's going. Look, it's going as planned. And personally, I think what's frustrating fans I think it's clouding like a lot of the fans right now is basically the success that the Flyers had last year. Because look, they start last year. Like, look, he did his Provorov, whatever. He got rid of some pieces, and I didn't say it at one point. I'm like, the thing is, like, if Sean Couturier stays healthy, and if Morgan Frost is a 2C, and if Sean Walker is Sean Walker before the injuries, this team has a chance to be good. And look, and the first half of last season they were, but then reality set in. We lost our goalie. Couturier hit a wall and everything. And I find the second half of last season is more of the team that we have is the actual Flyers than the first half of last season. So, and I think it clouds a lot of the fans' minds. It's like, oh, but we're better than we should be, so just make a trade here and there, and next year we're going to be competitive. But like, look, in general, rebuilds take at least 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I think right now the way we're going, and hopefully if we can, like, it sucks to watch them lose, but at the same time, at least they're somewhat competitive games. Like, look, the 2 Toronto games, they were great games to watch. But in a way, I was happy that we lost both games Because now, like, we're closer. No, but we're closer. We need a top 5 pick. We need it. So if this season could go, like, could basically continue staying the way we're going, like status quo for the rest of the way, if we could end up, because right now I think we're in 6th, we would be picking 6th right now.
Yeah.
Now there's 2 teams behind us. I think it's Buffalo and Seattle, if I'm not
And
mistaken.
they're playing against each other, funny enough, today.
And they're only and then they're only 1 point behind us. So in reality, we could even be 4th at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why I think the best thing would be, like, if we could just get a high pick this year, and then this is where Briere has to make his moves. Then in the offseason, we get that pick. Then with the rest of the picks that we have, and the with Scott Lawton, or if it's Joe Farabee, or it's Brink, you make a package, and that's the trade you're gonna lose. Like I said, that's the trade you're gonna lose, and go get yourself that center. And so that's why I believe in Briere right now. But like Isaiah said, this offseason is going to be a very important offseason. If he sits on his hands again and does nothing, then I'm going to start questioning Briere and be like, well, listen, now this is where you should have been starting to shave off here, shave off there, and I add a little bit here, So, yeah, so that's it.
You make some strong points, Eric, and honestly, I agree. And you bring some calmness to the Flyers fan base, which a lot of people appreciate. Believe me, that is a fair way to look at this, especially when you look at the situation that they're in right now. We can let this lead right into our second half predictions comments. So, with that being said, Isaiah, let me start with you. Give me some second half predictions for this team. Doesn't have to be anything specifically. It can be on their record. Could be some moves they make. Could be anything. So let me hear some thoughts from you.
Well, if I predicted that Michkov would get 51 points before the season, I actually think he's got a really good chance to exceed that and get to about the 60-point mark. So that's one thing. I do think before it's all said and done, they're going to impose their will on Kolosov, and he'll have a decision to make. But the Flyers will do the right thing for the organization and for him, and it's up to him to comply or not to comply. I think that's another thing. I think also that the number one trade chip for the Flyers going into the trade deadline will be Ristolainen, even with the extra year on his contract. Because I think it's an ideal time to trade that kind of player with how he's playing right now. If he maintains his health, and he'll be the guy. Yeah. And I think their goal is to lose the salary without retention for the reasons that we mentioned earlier. It's really important that the Flyers not retain salary going into next year. Yep. They can only do so much of that. The other thing is, I don't think they're going to move Lawton this trade deadline. But I do think it's possible, very possible, that he'll be included in that final year of his contract, if I'm reading this right. Because $3 million is really very reasonable. I'm sorry. He's, through next year. He could be included in a summer trade. Mm-hmm. And that makes a lot of sense because his value will be pretty high. And I think that they like Lawton for the effect that he has on Michkov. We see him kiss his helmet on the bench and all that kind of stuff. And I think maybe the offseason might be a better time. I want to take an offer, but like I said earlier, I want a player. And so the other thing, I think Travis Konechny is going to end up with 36 goals, falling short of 40. And I think that Samuel Ursan is going to have some more health issues, unfortunately. I also believe that Sean Couturier will decline. Not quite as bad as he did last year with a couple of those injuries, but I think he's going to become a big topic of conversation going into the offseason, his decline.
All good predictions. I'm going to Eric, let me actually let you go first on this one. I want to hear your predictions. I actually liked a lot of those, and I'll circle back to those shortly.
Well, I pretty much have the same as the way the season has been going. I don't really see anything changing much for this team. Bold prediction. I think the Flyers somehow end up with a worse power play than the Islanders this year. It's gonna keep on sliding. No, but look, I think I'm hoping, and I'm thinking that Michkov is gonna like, look, he's going through a little bit of a slump right now, points wise, but I think he picks it back up, and he's gonna win the Calder because we got it. Like, come on, one in the history of the Flyers, we haven't had one Calder winner. We need it. We need one Calder winner. So I think he's gonna pick it up in the second half, and he'll win the Calder. And I really hope to see Cates continue the way he's playing, because you know what, if he can keep it up, and even if he's like our 3C next year, at least if we don't have to rush Luchenko. Like, let's say if, for instance, let's say the Flyers do trade for a center, and they bring in a center, you still have Coots. Let's say even if you get rid of Frost, so that's already there. Cates could be your 3C. At least, you know what, you don't have to rush Luchenko, because look, he might come in next season, next preseason, and look good also. But like, if you're not sure, at least you don't have to force him into the lineup. So I really hope Cates, Forrester, Brink, they keep up the good work, like raise their, keep their value up. I'm very disappointed in Farabee. He's always been one of my always a player I loved since he was drafted by the Flyers, and it's really sucks the way his season is going right now. And actually, talking about Briere, going back to the Briere topic for just a quick second, he's a guy I thought Farabee was definitely getting traded last offseason. And you know what? That's a player right now that his value has just tanked. Mm-hmm. Because if you would, you know what? Like, yeah, he had the really bad end to the season, but you could have sold another team on the first 2/3 of his season, and his pedigree too. And like right now, like I think he has like almost no trade value unless there's a team that really wants to take a chance. Mm-hmm. But so hopefully he could, pick it up. And look, I think another bold prediction. Just because I just love watching him, even though he's not great, but I just love watching him. Fedotov will end up being the starter. Will finish the season as the starter for the Flyers.
That's a spicy one. I kind of like that. And honestly, the way Erson's been dinged up, I don't think it's unrealistic as you think, or as anyone would think here. All right, here's mine. Travis Konechny will be the first Flyer since 2012 to eclipse the 35-goal mark. The last time the Flyers had a guy score at least 35 goals was Scott Hartnell back in the 2012 season. He put up 37 with Claude Giroux and Jaromir Jagr as this man's line mates. It has been quite some time. Travis Konechny will also be the first point-per-game player the Flyers have had, I think, since Claude Giroux. I don't think they've had any since. He will put up a 37-goal, 48-assist, 85-point season is where I hold that. Michkov, he will be a finalist, and I want to root and hope he wins the Calder. I think Celebrini ends up taking it. I do think Michkov will get the most points, but I do think that Celebrini's time that he missed and how close he keeps up with them. Lane Hudson will be the other finalist. There's realistically, I think, only 3 candidates at the moment. But I think to go maybe in perspective for each guy's point total, I think Michkov ends up with about maybe 61 points. He puts up about 25 goals, 36 assists. I think Celebrini ends up at 58, and I think Hudson ends up at 53. So all 3 end up having very good seasons. But anyway, besides the point. Number 2, I think trade deadline-wise, I think the Flyers moved 2 bodies. I think Rasmus Ristolainen being the most obvious. I think Isaiah is going to get his wish and they get a body back. They're actually going to get a half-decent prospect. The team I predict he gets moved to is actually the Dallas Stars. I think Dallas could use a little bit more, add some bolstering. They have already a very good defense, but I'm going to predict they end up having a substantial injury, and they make the call to Ristolainen to add him, and they end up picking up a prospect from him. I also believe Morgan Frost gets moved. I don't think they're going to get a lot back for him, but I do think they end up getting either a B-tier prospect or maybe a low-end second-round pick. So I think those 2 guys end up getting moved to create some space maybe for pretty much a blue line opening and a center opening for this team. I do agree, Isaiah. I believe Lott is more likely to be moved in an off-season trade. We'll see who and where. but I think he's more likely to be moved in the offseason and potentially a package deal. My bold prediction for the second half into the offseason is Dylan Cousins becomes a Flyer. I think the Flyers acquire Dylan Cousins in the offseason. That's going to be their big splash. As you've known, Eric, I've been very high on the Dylan Cousins train for quite some time right now, and I believe that is the guy they end up making a splash in on the offseason. It is a bit of a risk. He's got a lot of term. He makes $7.1 million. And there's going to be some pieces to move to make the cap work, and I think they find a way to make it work. A few other predictions. I do think I agree. I'm going to piggyback with Isaiah a little bit. I think Sean Couturier's decline is going to be a significant topic of conversation this offseason. Unfortunately, it seems like this has been a reoccurring thing with him where in the first half of the year he looks better. And then as the season weans on, the marathon of the NHL season wears on to a guy who has had multiple surgeries. He's had 2 back surgeries, had the core surgery now, and you look at it, it's like, how long is this guy going to really be able to hold up? I don't think he ends up even finishing that contract. We'll see when, but I think somewhere down the line he will either be bought out or retire or get moved. We'll see where or when. A few other predictions. I think Owen Tippett picks it up in the second half of the season. He ends up with over 25 goals again. He was the guy I predicted to be the goal-scoring leader of the Flyers at the beginning of the year. That doesn't look like it's going to land into fruition. That looks like a major whiff from my prediction. But I do think he does pick it up in the second half of the year and ends up with about 24, 25 goals, maybe 25 range. Not quite as good as the last 2 years, but I do think he at least, we look at it as like, okay, maybe Tippett has found his game. Prediction on the pick. I unfortunately don't think they end up quite at 6. I think this team wins a couple more games in the second half. I think they've played well enough, and some of these guys are going to pick up the game. I do think they do end up at a top 10 pick. My prediction is they're going to end up with a 9th pick, where they can potentially either trade up to get a little bit higher in the draft, or they'll settle at 9, and maybe a guy that they like will end up there. But my prediction is the Flyers end up with the 9th pick. They end up with 83 points and miss the playoffs, obviously. 1 or 2 other predictions. I think Samuel Erson's injury woes will continue. I think he'll end up on the shelf. And as Eric said, I think Fedotov will be the starter for the majority of the year once the 4th inevitable injury pops up, which I hope doesn't happen. But when you've had 3 lower body injuries already in this span of time, I feel like it's only a matter of time until the next one happens. And those are my predictions. Do either of you guys have anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
No, just that if like you said, if they do trade Risto to Dallas, I want Mavic Bork. That's it.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add, Isaiah, before we go to our last thing where we just predict the week?
No, I mean, I like that Eric's idea. I'm on board with any young talent we could get. That's my cause slab right now. That is everything for me.
All right, so we'll wrap it up. A little 2-minute combo here. Prediction for the rest of the week. So, Flyers got a couple games this week, starting with tonight. Anaheim game, which we'll be live streaming later on at 7 p.m. Then we have on Monday, they play the Florida Panthers, who just lost 4-3 to the Boston Bruins in overtime today, but significantly outplayed them. After that, on Tuesday, they wrap up their 3 games in 4 nights for the road game against Columbus. Then on Thursday against the Islanders, and then Saturday against the Devils. So actually from here to Saturday, they have 5 games. 5 games in 8 nights. This team might be a little gassed. But anyway, give me your predictions for the week. Anything in general. Eric, I'll start with you.
Well, listen, tonight I would strongly hope that they come out like with a real good effort. Because look, Anaheim's not a great team.
For obvious reasons, what they're playing against tonight, too.
So I think we win tonight. I'd like to predict a win tonight. Hopefully we shut them out and we shut out Cutter. So I predict a win tonight. But then Florida, Columbus. I'm looking at 2 losses there. Look, Columbus is playing really, really well right now. So they're starting to pick it up. They're starting to pick it up. Islanders, I don't like the Islanders, but they're pretty much almost in the same boat we are, but we're actually rebuilding. They're just mushy middle. So I think we got a chance against the Islanders, and then the Devils. The Devils are a wagon. So I'm predicting maybe 2-3 this week.
Fair. Isaiah.
Yeah, 2-1. I think they're going to lose 3 games, so they'll manage a point in one of those losses by getting into overtime. I think they'll beat Anaheim, and they'll find a way to beat Columbus, yet they'll lose against the Islanders because that's the kind of team the Flyers are. And I don't think they're going to beat the Devils.
Sounds about right. In fact, I have the same teams as you have, Isaiah. I predicted they were going to win 7-1 last week against Anaheim because I think they were going to come out with some fire. I don't feel as confident with that now after that Dallas game, but who knows? Maybe Torts tore into them and they'll come out guns a-blazing. We'll see. I think they get molly-whopped by Florida. In fact, I think they get shut out in that one 4-0 because this team is not capable of playing 2 good games in a row. It just seems like I win 2 games in a row, I should say. I agree. They have 2-0 against Columbus this year. They seem like they played well against them. I think they beat them again. They beat Columbus last time they traveled there 5-3. Although it was mentioned that Columbus was just coming off of a West Coast road trip, so that could have had some jet lag, could have had something to do with it. But I do think they beat Columbus in a gritty 3-2 game. Then lose to the Islanders, and because nothing makes sense in Flyer world. In fact, I'll even predict the Flyers the Islanders score a power play goal against us because that's the Flyers. And then last but not least, the Devils. I think they play the Devils tough. They lose in overtime, but they play them in a very tough 5-4 game. So I'll go 2-1 as well. And with that being said, that's going to wrap things up this week. Isaiah, thank you for coming on as per norm. You were great as per usual. Always love having your wealth of knowledge. Anyone who's watched us today, give them a follow at the O&B Puck on his Twitter account and give their podcast to listen to too. A lot of awesome videos and audio on that as well. Great work there, Isaiah. Thank you again for coming on.
You're welcome.
And Eric, thank you as well for being one of my gracious co-hosts as per usual. As I mentioned again, Jamey had to depart a little early this week. Unfortunately, he had a little bit of an emergency. Jamey, thank you for also coming on for the time you could. We love you, brother, and hope all is well. But with that being said, that's going to wrap things up. Tune in tonight, too. We'll be doing a live stream of the Flyers and Ducks game. Me and Eric will be there. And if you guys all want to join in as well, you're more than welcome to. But with that being said, that's going to wrap things up for our lengthy mid-season episode. Take care, everyone. And as always, let's go Flyers.